The chandelier light spilled across the ballroom like liquid gold, and 300 of the city's wealthiest guests fell silent the moment the 5-year-old girl in the pink dress buried her face in the shoulder of a man in a plain blue work jacket, a man half of them had walked past 100 times without ever learning his name. Nobody expected the billionaire's daughter, the child who had screamed through 11 nannies, 3 therapists, and a small fortune in bribes just to get through a bath time, to fall asleep peacefully in the arms of the building's janitor. But that's exactly what happened, in front of everyone who mattered, on the night that was supposed to prove she couldn't be helped at all. If you believe in second chances, in ordinary people carrying extraordinary hearts, hit that like button right now, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, share this with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Humanity Tales so you never miss a story like this one. 6 months earlier, nobody at Whitmore Tower would have guessed that Daniel Reyes, the quiet man who mopped the marble floors every night after the offices emptied, had once carried wounded men out of burning buildings on the other side of the world. He wore gray coveralls instead of a uniform now, kept his eyes down, and answered only when spoken to. 3 years of Navy SEAL deployments had given him steady hands and a stillness that most people mistook for emptiness. In truth, it was the opposite. Daniel had seen too much, lost too much, and come home to find that the war he carried inside him didn't end just because the flights did. His wife had left during his last deployment. His daughter, the one person who had kept him tethered to the world, had died of a fever while he was half a planet away, unreachable, helpless. When he finally came home, there was nothing left to come home to. So he took the quietest job he could find, in a building where no one asked questions, and he swept floors at night so he wouldn't have to sleep and dream. 8 floors above him, in the penthouse suite of Whitmore Tower, lived Adrian Whitmore, a billionaire whose name was stamped on half the skyline, and his daughter, Lily. Lily was 5 years old, with the same stubborn chin as her late mother, who had passed away when Lily was only 2. Since then, Lily hadn't spoken a single word to anyone. Not her father. Not her tutors. Not the parade of specialists Adrian flew in from 3 continents. She would scream when strangers touched her, refuse to eat in front of anyone, and sit for hours by the window, staring down at the street below as if waiting for someone who was never coming back. Adrian loved his daughter fiercely, desperately, in the clumsy way of a man who had built empires but couldn't build a bridge to his own child. He hired the best. He fired the best when they failed. And slowly, quietly, he was losing hope that anyone could reach her at all. The first time Daniel saw Lily was by accident. He was buffing the lobby floor late on a Tuesday when the elevator doors opened and a nanny came rushing out, chasing a small girl who had bolted barefoot across the marble, sobbing without a sound, her mouth open in a silent scream that was somehow more heartbreaking than any noise could have been. The nanny grabbed for her, and Lily thrashed so hard she nearly hit her head on the reception desk. Daniel didn't think. He simply lowered himself to the floor, sat down cross-legged right there in his coveralls, and did nothing else. He didn't reach for her. He didn't speak. He just sat, still and quiet, the way he used to sit beside frightened children in villages half a world away, children who had seen things no child should see, children who had also stopped trusting words. Lily stopped thrashing. She stood there, chest heaving, staring at this stranger who wasn't trying to grab her, wasn't trying to fix her, wasn't looking at her like she was broken. And for the first time in longer than anyone could remember, she simply watched, and did not run. The nanny reported the incident, of course, and Adrian Whitmore, alarmed that a janitor had been anywhere near his daughter, demanded to see the security footage. What he saw confused him. He watched, over and over, as his daughter, his wild, unreachable daughter, grew calm in the presence of a man doing absolutely nothing at all. Desperate men do desperate things, and Adrian was nothing if not desperate. Against his own instincts, against the advice of everyone around him, he asked the janitor to come upstairs. Daniel almost said no. He had spent years building walls precisely so that no one's pain could reach him again, and looking at Lily felt like looking at his own daughter's ghost. But something in the girl's eyes, that same silent scream he recognized from mirrors in hotel bathrooms during his darkest nights overseas, made him say yes. He didn't try to be a nanny. He didn't try to be a therapist. He simply showed up the way he knew how, sitting nearby while she played, never forcing conversation, never demanding eye contact, letting her set the pace the way he once let terrified children set the pace of their own healing. Some days she screamed and threw things across the room, and Daniel simply stayed, weathering it the way he'd weathered gunfire, without flinching, without leaving. Other days she sat beside him in silence for an hour, tracing the frayed edge of his sleeve with her small fingers, and he let her, understanding better than anyone that some wounds heal only when a person feels safe enough to stop fighting. Word spread through the household staff, then through Adrian's inner circle, that the janitor was somehow reaching the child no specialist could touch. Whispers turned to skepticism, and skepticism turned, in some circles, to outright hostility. Who was this man, really? What did they actually know about him? One of Adrian's board members, a sharp-tongued woman named Vivian who had long hoped to secure her own position closer to the family, pushed hardest of all, insisting that a janitor had no business anywhere near a fragile child, insisting that Adrian was humiliating himself and endangering his daughter by trusting a stranger with no credentials. Adrian, torn between the evidence in front of him and the fear a father carries for his only child, began to doubt himself. He nearly ended it. He nearly sent Daniel back downstairs for good, back to the mop and the empty hallways, back to being invisible. It was Lily who stopped him. On the night everything nearly fell apart, Adrian found his daughter standing at the door of his office, tears streaming silently down her face, holding the worn edge of Daniel's old jacket sleeve, which she had somehow taken from the laundry room and refused to let go of. She didn't speak, she still hadn't spoken a single word, but she held that jacket to her chest the way other children hold their mothers, and Adrian understood, in that moment, exactly what he had almost thrown away. He asked Daniel to stay. Not as a janitor anymore, but as whatever he needed to be. Daniel, who had spent years believing he had nothing left to offer the world, who had buried his own daughter and, with her, buried the part of himself that believed he deserved to help another child, found himself standing in a billionaire's office fighting back tears of his own. He explained, haltingly, pieces of his past, the deployments, the daughter he lost, the year he spent unable to speak about any of it to another living soul. Adrian listened, and for the first time in a long while, two broken fathers understood each other completely without needing many words at all. Which brings us back to that ballroom, months later, at the gala Adrian had been dreading, the one meant to reassure investors and society alike that the Whitmore family, and its fragile heir, was stable and well cared for. Lily had grown attached enough to Daniel that she insisted, in her own silent way, tugging his sleeve toward the car, that he come with them. Vivian and half the room watched with barely concealed judgment as the janitor walked in wearing his plain blue jacket among a sea of tuxedos, and their whispers grew louder when Lily, overwhelmed by the noise and the crowd and the chandeliers, began to cry. That was the moment. The moment Daniel scooped her up without hesitation, held her against his chest, and she buried her face in his shoulder and, astonishingly, fell still, fell calm, fell asleep in front of everyone who had doubted that a man with no fortune, no title, and no credentials could ever be enough. Adrian stood beside them, his own eyes wet, no longer caring what the whispering crowd thought, because his daughter, his silent, wounded daughter, was safe, and it was the man in the work jacket who had done what money never could. And then, for the first time in 3 years, a small voice broke the silence of that golden room. Barely above a whisper, muffled against Daniel's shoulder, Lily said one word, "Daddy." Except she wasn't looking at Adrian when she said it. She was looking at Daniel. And in that instant, everyone in that room understood that family isn't always about blood or fortune, but about who shows up, who stays, and who loves without asking for anything in return. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Humanity Tales for more stories like this one. And before you go, I have one small request. Please type Daniel in the comments below, just so I know this story reached you, and reached your heart the way it was meant to.